Recently, I've been shifting my focus to video topics that football fans might have forgotten about or that they simply haven't heard of, instead of talking about the same trending topics that everyone's already yapping about. Your feedback has been positive, so today I'm bringing another crazy story into the spotlight. Not about a national team, not about a club, but instead about a player. A very special baller who lit the Premier League on fire and even carried Togo to the World Cup, a country that had previously never even come close to qualifying. If you haven't guessed by my description, or if you simply like to click on videos with your eyes closed, I'm talking about Emmanuel Adebayor. By his accomplishments alone, he should be seen as one of the most legendary African players of all time. But unfortunately, his legacy hasn't aged that well. But to be fair, much of the blame has to be put on him. So in this video, I'm going to showcase to you all the absolute prime of Emmanuel Adebayor. But I'm also going to show you the other side of the coin. How tragedy, madness and his determination to do everything his way ended up costing him everything. But first, let me give you some context. Emmanuel's life was already worthy of a movie even before he became a footballer. It's said that young Adebayor couldn't walk until the age of 4 and only started doing so after someone kicked a ball in his direction while he was lying on the floor of his local church. Surprisingly, for a guy who was slow in his physical development, his football career actually began quite early. Adebayor was poached by Mets at the age of 15 and just 1 year later he debuted for Togo's national team before he even turned pro with his club. On the surface, he was a star, he had saved his family from poverty, but the culture in Africa is quite different from what you might imagine. You see, when a family is poor, everyone sticks together. But when one member becomes rich, their close family and even distant relatives feel entitled to their help. Adebayor was at Mets, earning less than 4,000 euros a month. Yet, everyone was looking for a handout. They even asked him for a 600,000 euros mansion. Understandably, the pressure of feeling like a meal ticket got to his head. One night, Adebayor held a handful of pills, ready to end his life. But he couldn't leave this world without saying goodbye to his best friend, and that call ultimately changed his mind. From that moment on, his rise would speed up at a galloping pace. Before he even turned 20, Adebayor guided Mets back to the top of French football with 13 goals in the country's second tier. His above-average numbers, especially for a player of his age, earned him a move to Monaco, where he had the opportunity to participate in their once-in-a-lifetime run to the Champions League final. As you all know, they didn't win it, but their outstanding efforts turned many of their players into stars. Julie, Morientes and Dado Perso all departed, opening space for Adebayor to lead the offensive line. Even though the squad was considerably weaker, Adebayor became the star they sorely needed, guiding his club to a respectable third-place finish with 15 goals of his own. Perhaps Monaco thought they could have him a little longer and build a new elite team around him, but Adebayor wasn't having it. He knew he was destined for higher flights and left for Arsenal in the middle of the 05-06 season. Meanwhile, Monaco entered a steep decline that culminated in their surprising relegation in 2011. Of course, when you enter a team with Henry, Van Persie, Bergkamp and Reyes, it's hard to stand out. But that didn't affect Adebayor one bit. I mean, if there's one thing Adebayor never lacked throughout his career, it was confidence. Way before he received any meaningful recognition, Adebayor achieved something that many stars in our sport failed to do so. Prior to 2006, Togo was a national team with no expression whatsoever. Let's say like Botswana in 2024. And to make it worse, they had to go against Senegal, World Cup quarterfinalists from the previous edition, Mali, Congo and Liberia, teams with far more cohesive squads. But game after game, Adebayor carried Togo to what would become an unforgettable moment in their history. With an impressive home record, having won all their matches, Togo went into the last matchday against Congo relying on themselves to qualify. But despite being so close to the finish line, they were losing by halftime and on the verge of throwing it all away. That's when Adebayor, who had already scored half of Togo's goals in their campaign, stepped up as an inspirational figure. In the locker room, he gave a fiery speech telling his teammates he wouldn't forgive them or himself if they let this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity slip out of their hands. It's crazy to imagine a 20-year-old addressing a locker room full of older players like that, but I guess it worked. In the second half, Togo turned the match around and secured their place in Germany. At the World Cup, however, Adebayor couldn't prevent Togo's early elimination. Maybe it was nerves, maybe it was a challenge of being the only gifted player in the squad, but either way, it didn't diminish his growing reputation. Despite the underwhelming World Cup, Adebayor's stock stayed high. With Henry and Van Persie frequently sidelined by injuries, Adebayor stepped up as Arsenal's main attacking force and never relinquished that position. Long before Sanchez, Aubameyang or Saka, Adebayor almost carried Arsenal to a Premier League title, the one they still haven't won in over 20 years. Ultimately, despite having bottled it in the last couple of match days, Adebayor generated huge interest from bigger clubs. I mean, it's not his fault that Arsenal are the eternal bottlers in England. So he was tempted with the interest of Milan and Barcelona, but in the end, he decided to stay for one more season. In the Gunners' eyes, he had proven his loyalty, but little did they know what was about to unfold.
We understand Manchester City are in talks with Arsenal over the signing of Emmanuel Adebayor.
Mark Clattenburg, Sean Wright Phillips, Adebayor! Well, that is the moment that he has dreamt about, and so too.
To be fair, Adebayor's relationship with Arsenal fans was never perfect. He was a hot and cold player, one day scoring a hat-trick and fighting for every ball, the next looking uninterested and unwilling to press or track back. At times, it felt like he didn't care about anything except scoring goals. Oh, and picking fights with pretty much everyone, including his teammates. Not even the legendary Lord Bednar escaped Adebayor's wrath. Still, despite all the drama, it was somewhat shocking when he joined Manchester City. At the time, the citizens were starting to assemble a title-challenging squad, so the move was seen as provocative.
No, it's not. It gets the people going.
Either way, most Arsenal fans brushed it off and moved on, but a loud minority seemed determined to make his life miserable, hurling insults and abusing him in the worst ways imaginable. So, can you really blame him for celebrating the way he did? In life, there are some lines you just don't cross, and being completely real, I don't think his gesture hurt Arsenal fans more than the chants hurt him. But while that moment must have felt cathartic, tragedy struck Adebayor just a few months later. Emmanuel was traveling through Angola with his Togolese teammates on their way to the AFCon when a terrorist group opened fire on the bus for 30 minutes. In a warlike scenario, Adebayor helplessly watched his compatriots getting shot with machine guns as if they were nothing but cattle to a group of rebels trying to make a point. 3 people died as a result of the conflict, and even though Adebayor wasn't injured, he had to carry his bloodied teammates to safety. It was a traumatic experience that made him retire from the national team for almost 2 years, and the worst part about it is that he would never be able to play at his best following this incident. He actually enjoyed an incredible start with City, but his form would wind down as the season progressed. Then with the arrival of younger, more exciting talent like Balotelli or Aguero, Adebayor became an afterthought, merely a backup option for the football elite. After all, he had a short temper, was unreliable and was getting closer and closer to his 30s. Nonetheless, Mourinho still found him to be a valuable acquisition for his star-studded Real Madrid, but his performances didn't magically improve overnight, much less when you're competing with the best in the world. Well, at least he had fun there. His tenure will always be remembered for how much he liked to pound on Barca players. Unfortunately, 18 Barca doesn't secure a place in El Santiago Bernabeu. So, Adebayor had to move on and in the process burn yet another bridge. 2 years after that iconic celebration, Adebayor still held a grudge against Arsenal, so out of all clubs, he chose fucking Spurs. Revenge and pettiness never got anyone far in life. Most rational people grasped that, but Adebayor had to learn the hard way. It was a stupid move all around. After all, those racist chants that Arsenal fans shouted to piss him off were previously chanted by Spurs fans when he was still a gunner. So, should we really blame the tragedies in his life for his shortcomings, or was Adebayor just terrible at making crucial decisions? Well, both. But Adebayor is much more than just a wasted talent. He was a guy that worked harder than most during the week, never created a bad environment if he wasn't provoked, and above all, knew how to bring out the best in everyone around him. On his best day, this guy was at the level of Eto'o and Drogba. But the problem was that he relied on hate and rage to get the best out of himself. And And over time, those who were simply more disciplined and committed to their careers surpassed them and made them obsolete. Adebayor wasn't a lazy guy, he wasn't a cocky guy, he just never found his peace of mind. In a way, I kind of relate to him, and I'm sure a few of you watching feel the same. He had that drive to achieve something outstanding, but in reality, he was doing it mostly to prove his haters wrong or to help others around him rather to actually do it for himself. Football gave Adebayor a lot, but it also left some permanent marks that time could never truly heal. So, in a way, his premature decline was kind of expected. Nonetheless, he kept his career going until he was about to turn 40, evolving into a journeyman and collecting stints in Turkey, Paraguay of all places, before retiring in Togo. To many, he was a flop, to others, a savior, but hopefully I've done my part to ensure his legacy lives on. And that is it for the video. Subscribe to Throne FC for the best football stories that you won't find anywhere else. I try to keep my topics as diverse as possible to always bring something new for you guys, but I need your help. If you're still unsure about whether you should subscribe or not, it's completely fine, but just leave a like so my next video pops up in your feed this next Sunday. Thanks for watching until the end, I appreciate your support, and I will see you in the next one.